Good afternoon. The meeting will now come to order. Hello, I'm Donna Savigny, President of the Board of Education, and I would like to welcome you to our July 10th, 2019 board meeting. In keeping with the board's commitment to open communication with the community, this meeting is being streamed live on the CCPS website at www.carrollk12.org and broadcast live on Channel 21. We are also recording this meeting so that it can be accessed on demand on our website and broadcast throughout the month on Channel 21. We would like to remind you that because this is a live broadcast, anyone who participates in the meeting needs to use a microphone. Later in the meeting, time will be provided for citizens to address the board regarding topics on the agenda or other items of concern, except for items relating to personnel. Persons wishing to address the board should fill out a blue card located on the table near the entrance to this room and pass it to the superintendent or the board president prior to the conclusion of the scheduled citizen participation. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, board members, I need a motion for the approval of the agenda. Moved by Ms. Battaglia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kyler. Board members, any comments, additions, or changes? No? Then with that, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now, board members, I need a motion for the approval of the minutes. For I'm sorry, for the unapproved board meeting minutes for June 12, 2019.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kyler. Board members, any comments or revisions? No? Board members, I do have two comments that I would like to address. The first one would be on page 10. About halfway down the page, the beginning of the paragraph that says, the board expressed concern that this bid shows a 15% differential, and then it says, in the estimate from what the board initially was told for this project. I would like to change that to a 15% differential between low bidder and the selected bidder, because that was really what the discussion was around. Is that everyone in line with that? Okay, great. And the second change would be on page 17 with regard to the ratified agreements. Under the paragraph where it says, under the A&S master agreement as submitted, it says employees stay on their salary step but get an increase of 3.5%. I think that's a little bit confusing, the wording of that, and isn't exactly right. So I think we can fix it by saying employees get an increase of 3.5% and just strike those additional words in the middle. Because it's baked into the steps. It's not that. So I think that's out of it. If it just says employees get an increase of 3.5%. Is that? And then additionally, there's the additional statement that says the additional $1 million from the Board of County Commissioners. I'd like to move that sentence up above the whole section because it looks like that's in reference to just the A&S contract when it's really in reference to everything. Is that everyone okay with that? Okay, great. Board members, any other comments or revisions on the minutes? No? Okay. Then with that, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the minutes as amended? That passes unanimously. Thank you, board members. Okay, and now we will move to recognition of retirees. Dr. Lockard.
We are here to recognize
our retirees. And Ms. McCabe is here to bring greetings. And first, let me just say, and we'll do a lot of thanking here, but how indebted we are for the incredible work over many, many years. I think you'll hear the combined total here in a minute. It's really astounding. And if you think about the lives touched, the impact made to students and the community of Carroll County, we are certainly grateful for your service, for all that you brought each and every day to Carroll County Public Schools. This is but a very small token of appreciation, but please know how much you're appreciated. So with that, Ms. McCabe.
It really is.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find my place here.
It really is our honor to recognize everyone this evening. Our first is Carolyn Showalter, elementary school assistant, Piney Ridge Elementary School, with 36 years.
Ms. McCabe, if you could hold on for 1 second, we'd like to come down and be able to shake hands with everyone.
Very sorry about that. Robert Adams, building supervisor, North Carroll Middle School, with 16 years.
Ladies first.
Deborah Dayton, special education assistant, West Middle School. Dana Falls, Director of Student Services, 31.5 years.
Not yet.
Charles Smith III, Assistant Supervisor, Plant Maintenance Department. He has 25 years.
I'm not getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's great. This is Dorsey. My son's working at William Winchester.
Richard Stoltz, Building Supervisor, South Carroll High School, 15 years. Joanne Davis, special education teacher, Winfield Elementary School, 18 years. Patrick Dodderwike, social studies teacher, Shiloh Middle School. Donna Gable, junior accountant, central office, 25 years. Irene Hildebrandt, supervisor of media and technology, 25 years. Arthur Matthews, Social Studies teacher, Westminster High School, 39 years. Betty Parker, LPN, Mechanicsville Elementary School, 30 years. And is there anyone I missed? So our combined total number of years this year for all of our retirees is 2,055 years. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations.
Wow, 2,055 years. That's pretty amazing. Thank you again, everyone, for all of your years of service and everything that you've done for this school system. Okay, moving on to public participation. We'll move on to public comments. Ms. Herbert.
And here we go. To have an orderly presentation of comments by the public, the following guidelines apply. Number one, citizen participation is not intended to be a question and answer session. However, if citizens have specific questions, the superintendent will assign a staff member to make contact during the board meeting to arrange a time to respond to questions. Number two, the superintendent board reserves the right to correct misinformation presented as factual after the conclusion of the citizen participation period. Number three, statements to the board should relate to a recent agenda item, and an agenda item that is expected to appear in the future, or matter of general policy over which the board has authority. Personnel matters, pending appeals, the action of statements of individual staff, or items related to employee negotiations are not appropriate topics and may not be discussed. Number four, it is the intent of the board to allow all citizens an opportunity to speak. Therefore, the board has scheduled time on the agenda for citizen participation. The board reserves the right to limit the number of speakers on a particular topic so that all topics may be addressed. If 30 minutes has passed and there are citizens who have not addressed the board, additional time may be allotted later in the meeting. And number five, comments are limited to 3 minutes or less. When the allotted time expires, the speaker is permitted to complete a sentence and return to the audience. The public may not display signs or posters during the board meeting. In lieu of signs, or if you are unable to complete your comments in the allotted time, individuals are encouraged to submit their remarks to the board in writing. And the first person this evening is Kim Graff, please.
Hello, my name is Kim Graff, and I'm here to discuss a transportation issue. According to the regulations, buses will be assigned to operate on paved roads a minimum of 20 feet wide. A turnaround may be established if a student resides greater than 1 mile from the nearest bus stop. And a bus route may be extended if a student resides greater than 1/2 mile from a bus stop and the bus does not have to use a backing procedure. We meet these requirements. Our residence is exactly 0.7 miles from any bus stop. Our road is paved and 20 feet wide from Route 30 to our residence, and we installed a non-backing turnaround area on our property. Therefore, the basis of my argument is, why are we being denied a bus stop when we meet the requirements, yet they are allowing other bus stops that do not meet these requirements? Transportation's reasons for denying us vary and are always changing. First, they said our road was too narrow. I pointed out the narrow portion of our road can be avoided, and they already have buses traveling on roads that are not 20 feet wide. They also said there is no safe place for the bus to loop. That was true until we created a new turnaround area on our property. We've requested requirements for the turnaround and were never given any, nor can we find any regulations regarding turnarounds other than the distance. 1 mile you can back up, half a mile you must loop. Transportation now states our turnaround is too small, yet it is bigger than the loop area they are currently using at the end of our road. They state that our turnaround is on private property, and we must get the state or county to agree to maintain it. We have contacted several landowners and business owners that have bus turnarounds on their property. They all said they never signed anything and the state and county does not maintain their property. Why are we being asked to do something that isn't being done at other turnaround sites? Also, they said there wasn't time in the route or money in the budget to extend the bus route. How is that possible when they did the exact same thing for our neighbor back in October? Our neighbor spoke at this board meeting. It took transportation 2 days to extend the bus route because they deemed it unsafe for their children to walk a half a mile. Why are they requiring us to walk a farther distance with more children on the same roads? And here are some examples of other routes and stops that don't meet the current regulations. A bus travels a half a mile to a backing turnaround. Transportation states this is for people living a mile back the road. Well, the Maryland-Pennsylvania line is at only 4/10 of a mile back that road. No child is walking a half a mile. Why is this illegal backing maneuver allowed? Another bus travels a road that is only 1 mile long and 11 feet 6 inches wide. Transportation says this is for the convenience of the run. Another bus loops through a neighborhood where the farthest house is only 4/10 of a mile from the main road. Transportation states these stops were created many years ago and do not meet current policy, but it eliminates those students from gathering along the main road. So again, why is it not safe for these children, but you want my children to go 7/10 of a mile? A bus also stops a 1/10 of a mile from Ebb Valley Elementary School.
Excuse me, Kim, just
I know.
just finish your
I'm
thought.
sorry, I have
Good.
many
No,
examples I could go on.
That's fine,
So-
and you can leave them.
Okay, finally, as you see, I'm frustrated and confused. Why is transportation arbitrarily applying the rules and protecting some students while not protecting mine? I sincerely hope you can offer some insight and some assistance with my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker this evening is Celeste Jordan.
Good evening, Commissioner and board members. I'm a teacher, Carroll County Public Schools. I've been a teacher here in the county for over 20 years now. A few years back, when we decided to create the bring your own device policy, I said that it will go down as the worst decision ever in my educational career, and I was right. I have a policy of no phones in my room, and I do support that you guys are trying to put the genie back in the bottle or close the barn doors after the cows are out, but they're out.
The horses.
I grew up next to a dairy farm. So I would hope that over the next month, 2 months to when we get back to school, that this body will inform the public of the new policy, because Apple Watches and smartwatches don't fit the new policy. And when my job becomes harder because I'm going to be the one explaining the new policy, and I'm going to be the one faced with parent complaints because I'm enforcing a policy that now actually lines up with my policy, I really hope you guys do your due diligence over the summer. Again, I'm happy that you're trying this, because I do believe the school is responsible for providing the technology our students need in the classroom. It was always a bad idea to let them bring in whatever. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes our comments this evening.
Okay. So moving on to employee groups. Good evening, Ms. Deal.
Good evening, Dr. Lockard, board members, Commissioner Weaver. My name is Diane Deal, and I'm the president of CASE, representing Secretary Clerical, LPNs, and instructional assistants. Our CASE negotiations team had a productive meeting yesterday with members of your team. We feel that we clarified our position, along with clarifying some misconceptions. We also feel we made it clear how all could be resolved to reach a settlement. We look forward to hearing your response later this week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Summer mode, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Then we shall move, I'm sorry, I should check. Are there any other employee groups in the room that wish to speak? So moving on to board member and superintendent updates. Board members, your correspondence. Who'd like to go first? Mr. Kyler?
Prior to the last meeting, we had the graduations. After our last meeting, I attended a couple of the 5th grade promotion celebrations, and which was a lot of fun, and been to a few graduation parties, and it's a winding down time of the year, but it's kind of neat. I was really impressed with the organization and how well the 5th grade promotion celebrations went on. They were orchestrated just as well as any of the graduations. It was neat.
Ms. Pataglia?
So I have a little PSA that I'd like to share with everyone. This is from CARE, which is a partnership for a healthier Carroll.
So how are you doing today, Savannah?
I'm pretty good.
So far, so good.
I'm all right, I guess.
Can't complain.
Good, just enjoying life as a parent. How are you really doing today?
Honestly.
Yeah. I've always wanted to keep this to myself.
My wife would probably be really upset.
I'm not supposed to talk about this?
Nobody wants to know my problems.
I want to know.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like kind of lonely a little bit.
Especially because I don't want to worry anyone. But, I don't really like my body.
And so I can't afford for my family to see me weak.
The baby is always crying. I've gotten to the point where I've started to really hate myself.
I'm really worried about her.
Sometimes I hurt myself or cut myself.
So I have to go on with the thoughts inside my head that I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough.
And I don't know how to approach her anymore.
And it's hard, but
I just feel like there's something wrong with me.
I'm scared I might have a drug problem.
I have a lot of trouble loving myself.
You know, sometimes it's,
And I don't know, but I think that my dad...
I just don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired. I feel like a bad parent.
might be using drugs while I'm at school.
Can't really talk to them because I don't want to drag anybody else down.
Have you told anyone about this? What made you talk to me today?
You asked. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, thank you.
But for someone to genuinely ask, how you doing, feels really good.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
I never knew it would feel so good to talk about it and get it out.
It feels good to actually say it.
I'm glad you're asking me because I probably would have never told anybody.
I try to get confused. If you ever need help, there are people who care.
being able to talk to you helps me.
I just came in for coffee, but I feel better, so thank you. Thanks for asking.
care enough to start the conversation. Let's end the stigma.
So the purpose of this PSA is to start the conversation, that it's okay not to be okay, and that it is okay to tell someone exactly how you feel. So this is something that is really starting out in Carroll County. We had a meeting the other day, and you should be seeing more of it.
Thank you.
And yes, I got to be in it, but no, I do not have a drug problem. Nothing there's wrong with that, because I know people have issues. They have some problems, and they're working on things, but I was just really glad to be asked to be part of that and just do a good PSA for the county.
Dr. Dorsey?
On the last day of school, I had the privilege of attending the 2019 Farewell Assembly at Northwest Middle School and also parts of the Grade 5 Farewell Ceremony at Cranberry Station Elementary School. And I must say that I was very, very impressed by the overwhelming family support at both ceremonies. In fact, all the parking lots, the side streets, were just filled with cars, and entering those facilities, just seeing the pride that the parents were showing in their faces as their students were being celebrated was really overwhelming. So I think our students certainly have a lot of family support, and it's certainly good to see. On the 21st of last month, I attended MABE's ad hoc equity meeting, and at that time we received updates on the Maryland Coalition for Equity meetings and local equity adoption efforts. And I must say that Carroll County's plan was included in the adoption efforts that we looked at that particular day. And at that meeting, we also continued a conversation about the next steps to address equity issues, including a best practices toolbox. And finally, on the 24th of June, I attended the Conference Program Committee meeting for MABE's annual conference, which is scheduled for October 2 through 4 in Annapolis. And we are planning some pertinent sessions for this year's conference. And it's exciting to hear that several of our board members are going to be in attendance at that conference. So I think we have a lot to look forward to and a lot to really benefit from by participating in this conference. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Herbert?
I got around the last couple weeks, and I didn't mean it anything. I just visited everyone and all my ambassador schools and wished everybody a happy summer. Enjoy it. Some of them I know that teachers are going back to school and all that, but I did do that. I also went to Camp Intervention for several days. I went up to Elmer Wolf and all the kids and I watched their activities, and I also went to Manchester Elementary. And I couldn't do it last month, but I just want to thank everybody for all the cards and well wishes and the flowers and the really nice phone calls and emails about my mother's death. And I really appreciated that from everyone.
Thank you. And I just want to repeat what Mr. Kyler said. So I actually had my son graduated from had a 5th grade graduation ceremony at Sandamount. So I went to that, and that was a lot of fun. The programs were really well run, and it's just great to see the kids so excited to move on to middle school and kind of the end of a chapter, so to speak. Not the end of an era, but the end of a chapter. So that was very fun and exciting. The other thing that I was able to attend was one of the educational sessions with the commissioners about the different forms of government. They had asked that we had a representative there from the education community just to see, if any questions came up concerning education. And there really weren't, because we're governed by, the education article and the annotated code. The form of government doesn't really impact education. But it was interesting to see how strong people feel in different directions on that particular issue. So, but I thought the commissioners did a really nice job of that, and we'll probably be seeing more information down the road. But that was it with the school year winding down. It was a very exciting end to the school year and very successful school year. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Lockard.
Thank you, Ms. Savigny. Good evening, everybody. Happy summer. I'm hoping it slows down just a little bit here as we ramp back up. I'd like to begin the evening by congratulating students from our Career and Technology Center who participated in the National Skills USA competition in Louisville, Kentucky in June. The engineering design team of Malia Cohen, Leanne Gomez, and Bethany Stoll won a gold medal in their event. Delaney Bartholow, Christina Kemp, and Rachel Haynes received a silver medal in promotional bulletin board. Our students also played among the top 10 in the nation in several other events, including pin design, automated manufacturing technology, masonry, diesel, and American Spirit. We congratulate all those students and staff at the Career and Technology Center for doing such a wonderful job representing our school system and the state of Maryland. I'm also very proud to announce that Hannah McNett, a science teacher at Manchester Valley High School, has been named one of 3 finalists from Maryland recommended to receive a 2019 Presidential Award for Excellence in the Teaching of Mathematics and Science. Hannah was chosen by the Maryland State Department of Education in recognition of her excellent record in teaching the sciences to high school students. The Presidential Awards are the highest honors presented by the federal government in recognition of teachers who have demonstrated excellence in the teaching of the STEM field. So we congratulate Hannah for this well-deserved recognition. Just an update that I wanted to provide. We heard a lot about this as we were concluding our negotiated agreements. Part of our negotiated agreement with our Teachers Association, our CCEA, was that we would be eligible because of the local funds for the Kerwin Salary Incentive Grant Program through the state of Maryland. And so I want to just make sure everybody knew we took full advantage of that. We completed the paperwork. We got we got
Teresa was waiting with bated breath.
We completed the paperwork. I signed off on it. County Commissioner President Steve Wantz signed off on it. It was submitted well before the June 30th deadline to the state and received. So all is good there, and I'm happy that we're able to capitalize on that salary match grant. So just wanted an update. And finally, I want to give a well-deserved, as we're recognizing retirees this evening, I want to give a well-deserved recognition to Dr. Margaret Pfaff on her impending retirement. Her last day with us is this Friday. Dr. Pfaff has dedicated her entire career to Carroll County Public Schools, most recently several years as our Director of Curriculum. I think you've seen the results of our student achievement over these many years, and Dr. Pfaff has been leading in Carroll County Public Schools, innovating in Carroll County Public Schools, and will be tremendously missed in Carroll County Public Schools. She won't go that far. She'll be jumping into a new role at McDaniel College, but we wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you, Margaret, for your years of service to our school system and wish you nothing but the best. And that concludes my comments.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lockard. Okay, we have no presentations this evening, so we'll move directly to reports. And first up is the school construction report. Dr. Lockard.
All right, so board members, this is a regular agenda item where we provide updates to any ongoing school construction items. That is there for your review, and we have staff available for questions that you might have.
Board members? And Mr. Marks, I don't actually have any questions tonight. It looks like everything is going as planned. Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, then we will move on to the Safe to Learn Act implementation report.
Great. Board members, this is again a monthly report, and I'm going to make a recommendation to the board. We have done this all year as we've implemented components of the Safe to Learn Act that I don't believe we need to continue to come back because all these things have either been implemented or are being finalized in implementation. And so instead of a monthly agenda item, we can bring you updates as necessary or as appropriate or upon request. But we really have, thanks to Dwayne, Carl was here, Streaker, last month to talk about a policy update with the inclusion of mental health supports and services with Amy Jagoda on board. We feel like we've really done a lot of great work in terms of not only meeting the tenets of the Safe to Learn Act, but also putting in place what we feel is most important here to us in Carroll County as well through your Security Advisory Council, et cetera. So with that, we certainly have folks here if there are any questions about any of the things that we've been doing, but I'm going to recommend to the board that we will now bring these to you as necessary or as requested.
Board members, any thoughts?
That sounds good. I just had a question about the hall monitors and their training. Looks like it's going to have to wait a bit, so I'm wondering if that training has already been scheduled and how early in the year those hall monitors will receive their training.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are y'all doing? Actually, there's an update on that. So that has changed since that report was submitted.
Oh, okay.
So we will have 12 of those hall monitors in training, the training that's scheduled for the 22nd through the 26th. And then there will be a remaining 6 that will still have to be trained. And then any potential new hires or any turnover. So we're actually in very good shape with that.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Lockard, I would just like to reiterate your comments. I think that makes a whole lot of sense, that we would just bring this back as there are updates. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Everett, you had...
Nope, you said everything I was going to say. I said, yep.
Okay. And I just wanted to thank staff, especially Mr. Williams, Mr. Streaker, Mr. Falls, if he's still in the room. He had a lot. This was a very large piece of legislation that had a lot of wide sweeping implications. And the fact that staff really swarmed on this and really just moved into action very swiftly. And very proud of how we reacted to this legislation and the actions that we've taken. So just want to say thank you to everyone for a very successful implementation of a very, very large piece of legislation. So. Okay, then we will move on to the personnel transaction report.
Okay, board members, I'm going to bring 2 items for your information. These are not for approval, but these are transfers for certificated personnel. First, I'm going to announce the transfer of Todd Hicks from assistant principal at Westminster High School to assistant principal at Liberty High School. That would be effective tomorrow, July 11th. And I also bring you transfer of Tom Klaus from coordinator of curriculum and instructional technology to assistant principal at Westminster High School. Again, we have been finalizing some of our internal moves. I'm going to be bringing to you some recommendations for personnel appointments here in a minute, but these are simply internal transfers for your information.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Okay. Then we will move on to, we got through that pretty quickly and are at the second set of public participation, but I don't believe we have any additional cards for the evening. Was there anyone in the room who wanted to take advantage of this at the moment? And Ms. Kitzinger, I see you holding her card. Come on up.
I was debating speaking. The last meeting I came to was very long. I didn't want to add to another long meeting. But I'm Rosemary Kitzinger. Many of you know me as the special ed guru. And again, tonight, I'm actually not speaking on behalf of special education. Shock. I would like to start with thanking Dr. Lockhart and Jason Anderson for their listening ears about the challenges FSK particularly faces with scheduling and equity of classes. I think we had a very productive meeting, and I would like to say thank you. I look forward to hearing what comes back from Dr. Lockhart and staff about how to solve our issues. I can't speak for other high schools and what their issues may be with scheduling, but Mr. Winters and Mrs. Welty did an excellent job representing FSK and giving input to Mr. Anderson and to myself. I learned a lot about how our schedule is created as well. So very insightful. So I'm hopeful for FSK. Don't forget us. And I'm going to give my 2 cents on the bring your own device policy. For the love of God, could we get rid of the devices? I can attest it did not hold my children back from going to college, that I was the strict mother that did not give the smartphones. I had children enter college without smartphones. Surprise, they made it to college without those darn devices. On the negative, I see a lot of negative with the devices from students inappropriately using them in various different manners, whether it's bullying or sexting or whatever. Very inappropriate behavior. So for the love of God, could we get rid of those? So there's my 2 cents on that, and next time we'll talk special ed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other blue cards in the room? No? Okay. Then we will move on to action items. Board members, I need a motion for the approval of appointments.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia. Second by Dr. Dorsey. Dr. Lockard.
Okay, board members, I have 4 appointments for your approval this evening. I'm very excited about the team that's being built here in Carroll County Public Schools. First, I'll start with our principal vacancy. I'm recommending Shannon Mobley, currently a principal in Baltimore City Public Schools, to principal of Francis Scott Key High School. Next, I'm recommending Michael Duffy. He's currently an athletics and activities manager, very similar to an athletic director position in Howard County Public Schools, to the supervisor of athletics here in Carroll County. Third, I'm recommending Steve Wernick, who's currently a supervisor of Title I in the Performance Equity and Accountability Office, to director of elementary schools. And finally, it gives me great pleasure to recommend Angela McCausland, who's our current supervisor of career and technology here in Carroll County Public Schools, to director of curriculum and instruction. Again, I'm very excited about making these recommendations to you. Each of these individuals brings talents and skills that are needed and will benefit our student, staff, and our communities. And so these are my recommendations for you this evening.
Board members, any questions or discussion? Mr. Kyler?
I'd like to make a brief comment. Between the last couple of meetings, I've gotten some feedback that we don't discuss this enough. We just sit here and vote. A lot of personnel issues, there's a lot of time. How long of a process were these, you think? I mean, months?
Yes.
Yes. So there's a lot of time, a lot of discussion, a lot of stuff happens. Some of it's confidential and doesn't belong in an open meeting. So this isn't the first time we've seen these 4 names. And I just would like to make sure everybody understands that. And if you have questions, please ask them. But don't think that we're just sitting here raising our hand because a piece of paper got here. This has been discussed a lot.
And I would agree with that, Mr. Kyler. You know, personnel items can't really be discussed in open, but we can certainly talk about the process, right? Like not any particular name, but the process where this is it's a very structured, fairly lengthy process to fill any of these positions.
That is correct, and very competitive as well.
Right. And it's one of the reasons why you are so excited about the folks that you are bringing forth, right? So.
And that's the thing too. I mean, I'm sure you would not come with a recommendation that you just picked out of a hat. I'm pretty sure you have vetted and you have, you know, gone through everything to decide that this is who would fit where they want to be at, or you recommend them to be. So, and just like Ken, yeah, I constantly hear, like, why didn't you ask questions? Well, I don't technically hire people. That's you.
Right. Right. Yes, to all the points made, there is a very thorough screening, interviewing, vetting, referencing, you name it, process that we go through that's pretty arduous and pretty lengthy. I'm looking back at Chantress. And we dot the I's and cross the T's and do our homework. And And so I'm bringing you the culminating component, which is approval, but to Mr. Kyler's point, this isn't out of the blue to you or, something that's just brought, for a rubber stamp, so to speak. It's a very involved, vetted process that we take very seriously.
And Dr. Lockard, how long would you say the typical process is from the time it gets posted to when you actually?
If you want to answer.
Please, go ahead.
So generally, at a senior level position, it takes us 60 days or greater for us to get to the point of presenting the board with a recommended candidate.
Okay.
So we go through the process of opening it up for a designated period of time, the posting period, and then once we will screen initially based off of the baseline criteria. Then we screen again through a screening committee. It's a first-tier interview. Then it's a second-tier interview, which is presented to the superintendent. We verify references. We verify experience, education, to ensure that we're putting before you the best quality candidates possible.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Baptist. Okay, board members, any other questions or comments? No? Then with that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you. And moving on to board members, I need a motion for the approval of personnel action items.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kyler. Dr. Lockard.
Okay, board members, this evening for personnel action items, I have for your approval 22 new hires, 11 leaves of absence, 6 increases and 3 decreases, which are outlined in your board packets.
Board members, any questions? Ms. Baptist, I fear that I'm probably going to call you up again. Just a couple of quick questions. I know that we have 22 new hires for the teachers.
Correct.
And do we, and this is all information that probably would come out of the hiring and departure analysis that will happen in the future, but how many positions are we still looking to fill?
We currently have 20 openings as of Monday.
20 openings, okay. And out of these 22 positions, were those mostly first choices and acceptances?
So we are actually in a great position right now where we are currently able to hire our first choice. And the candidates are still at extreme criteria level, extreme excellent candidates in the candidate pool. So we're still have a lot of people who we are going to be able to select who are still our first tier candidates.
Okay.
So because we are just in the process of them resigning from their current systems within the state of Maryland and getting them on board with us here at CCPS. So we're in a, now I'm probably jinxed us, but right now as we stand, we are in a good position.
Okay. Excellent.
The deadline, however, to resign for tenured staff members is July 15th. So this coming Monday, I will be able to have more final or closer to final results of if someone's going to resign and go to another system within the state of Maryland.
Okay. And I did notice that we had a fair number of experienced teachers that are coming in.
I know, I was very excited because bringing in, sometimes people think that if you're bringing in first-year teachers that you are a breeding ground or just a training facility, but now we see the migration back to Carroll systems from the surrounding school districts. So it's a really good thing to see some of that historical return.
Excellent.
Come back. We like them to come back.
Uh-huh.
I have a real quick question. What would be the reason for the decrease? Because we have 3 that are decreased. So what would be one of the reasons? Would it be enrollment? Would it be that?
It could be restructuring. It could be restructuring of an FTE, consolidating an FTE, or one of the schools deciding what coursework courses need to be changed. So it could be a wide variety of reasons why you would see a decrease.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Board members, any other questions? Okay, then I call for the vote. All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, board members, I need a motion for the approval of the award of bids.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kyler. Dr. Lockard.
Okay, board members, there are 6 items on the award of bids. I think last time it was like 27 or something, so this is good. And I'm very excited about a few of these for sure. So, Ms. Savigny, we can do each one individually, ask questions if you'd like.
Why don't we do it that way?
Okay, very good. So first up is the construction of ADA bathroom and LFI suite modifications at Liberty High School. And you can see the recommended award being made in your agenda packet there for the construction of the bathroom as well as the modifications necessary for the LFI program at Liberty High School.
Dr. Lockard, can I ask about the source of these funds? Because I did take a look at the capital improvement plan, and this is not a project that would be in the capital improvement plan.
Not a specific project, but it is being funded from the local CIP from 2 sources. The first is the barrier-free project account, or sort of that's the term we use for basically the ADA account, and then a little bit of money from the infrastructure renewal account together fund this whole project.
Okay, so partially from the CIP, partially
No,
in
both from the CIP.
both from the CIP. Okay.
Partially from 2 different project accounts within the CIP, local CIP.
Okay. Okay, great, thanks.
Sure.
Board members, any other questions on that item? No? Okay. Moving on to number 2.
Okay, number 2, it's a piggyback contract with Baltimore County Public Schools. I'm really excited about a career and college and career counseling tool, Naviance. It is a tool that's used in just about every Maryland school system, in fact, all over the United States. It's a web-based solution for middle and high school for our to be used by our students and our staff and our parents. And I will not do it service here in just trying to describe it to you, but it provides us with the ability to support students in creating academic plans, exploring career pathways, researching colleges, college application support. It goes on and on and on. It is an incredibly valuable tool. And again, I'm not really doing it justice here, but one that I've actually used personally with my own kids as well as in my other previous districts, and just saw such huge benefit for our teachers, our students, and our families. And so I'm really excited about bringing that to Carroll County Public Schools. And I know there's a lot of excitement with our staff as well.
That's great. And the 339,000 is a 5-year number, and so this would be running through the operating budget, and we were able to find a way to...
Right. That was through the curriculum instruction budget. It's money that's already in our budget and prioritized by Dr. Pfaff and staff. I know she consulted with me as well as with Mr. Anderson in bringing that forward, and we absolutely are excited about having Naviance in Carroll County Public Schools.
It's a very good news story.
Yes.
Board members, any questions on that?
Is there any way they could show us like a little tutorial on how it works?
I don't
Maybe
have
at
that.
the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't have that prepared this evening, but I'd be happy to give you some information about that. Yep.
I think it'd be good for next
Could maybe
meeting.
be one of the presentations or something?
Sure.
Okay. Great.
Fantastic.
Okay, moving on to number 3.
Another recommendation I'm very excited about with Performance Matters, Assessment and Analytics. We already have a contract with Performance Matters, and we're recommending an additional amount of funding that's listed in your packet for Performance Matters. This is a tool that provides us with all sorts of data analytics. We're not taking advantage of what all Power School has to offer. And so we want to take full advantage of it. It's very much in line with the dashboard concept that we've been working on. And so we've met with folks from Performance Matters from Power School. The dashboard that can capture and compile data from multiple internal sources and systems, state assessments, local assessments, attendance data, discipline data, et cetera. It allows our staff, even at the school level, to be able to retrieve and drill down into data, for staff to be able to have the ability to look at short-term measures, historical data progress, staff to be able to run reports so they have data at their fingertips, and not having to go to different places to find that. parents ultimately having access to a PowerSchool application where they can take a look at their students' progress, and it's another form of communication. And also, just as important that I'm excited about, it gives us the opportunity for improving our bridge plan work. CCPS is going to become a member of a group of school systems across the state of Maryland working to provide efficiency to the state-mandated bridge plans for academic validation. And we're really excited about that. It's going to provide students and teachers a more robust experience, increase efficiencies with the process. You know, this past year we had approximately 400 students completing bridge projects. Mr. Anderson visited each of our academic facilitators at our high schools and talked about how could we improve this process, and we realized we actually have the tool already. We just aren't accessing it in this capacity. So we believe bringing this bid award to you for recommendation supports our strategic plan in lots of ways and enhances our ability to communicate and actually utilize the data that we already have in a way that's really productive. That would be something else that I'd want to come back to you and go, and you'd probably see it in some of our strategic plan update reports throughout the year that we could demonstrate to you as a benefit.
I'm very excited about how this dovetails in with the strategic plan and the dashboard concept and the fact that the individual schools can use it as well on their SIT teams. It really, it brings everything together.
Yes.
Again, another good news story.
Yes, I think so.
And the fact that this is in the budget as well, right? We
Correct.
reprioritized some things in order to make this happen.
Yes.
So
This is also in the curriculum instruction budget. Yep.
excellent. Board members, any other questions?
No, I would just comment that it's just very powerful when you can certainly be looking at your data and to have it all right there in front of you. You don't have to send someone out to go retrieve this piece of data and someone else on the other end to retrieve something else, but it's all right there, so it's pretty powerful, and I think it will be certainly something that our staff and students, and as you said, even the parents, can find quite helpful.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll move on to number 4.
All right, next is a piggyback contract with Frederick County Public Schools for bulk purchases of engineered wood fiber playground mulch.
Board members, questions? So, Dr. Locker, can you help me understand there's 100,000 is the total quote between the delivery and the one-site delivery and the distribution. Is that for all 23 elementary schools and all playgrounds around the system?
Here comes Ms. Cotter to give us the logistics.
Yes, that is for all our elementary school playgrounds. And the reason why it's broken up is because they do one main delivery to Winters Mill High School. They have the equipment to then put it into one of their own trucks, and then they blow it onto the playgrounds. Whereas if it was one delivery, our guys would be out there with the shovel, putting it into our truck, driving it over, then shovel and putting it back, applying it down to the playground. So that's why you have the two separate, the one for the procurement, one for the installation.
Okay, so that's the most efficient way to do it, is to have one drop site and then spread out
They
from
can
there.
do this in a matter of a few days, where if it was our guys having to do it, weeks for them to be doing it.
Okay. And so is this for all playgrounds on school grounds, or just...
Just those that are in need.
Okay.
They freshen up a lot of the playgrounds every year. Some will have more of a need than another based on how much water they might have, how much usage they have, so they just assess each one and apply accordingly.
Okay. Do you have a sense for how many locations that involves?
No,
with
I do
this
not. I
particular?
can find that out for you.
Okay. I'm just curious about how much it is on like a per site or per location cost.
Yeah. No, I can find that out for you, though. Okay. Okay?
Thank you. Okay. Number 5.
5 is another piggyback contract with Baltimore County Public Schools for Smart Snack Foods, and we're requesting the board approve utilization of that contract. And that contract will be valid through May 31st, 2024.
Board members, any questions? And again, this is built within the food services budget.
Correct.
And so I probably will be bringing up something under new business tonight. I really wanted to start talking about healthy choices within our food services department, so, but I will bring that up later.
Does it have to do with that one thing that was kind of out there about the grading system for different counties?
Actually, I had wanted to bring it up before I saw that, so.
I was going to say, I saw that too, and I was kind of like, that kind of bothers me a little bit.
Right.
I'd rather be an A than a C.
Okay. All right, and then finally, another piggyback contract with Baltimore County Public Schools, and this is for duplicator sales for when it's necessary to purchase copiers, associated supplies, et cetera.
Okay. And that's a typical pick list type of approach?
Yep.
Board members, any other questions or comments on any of the award of bids items? Okay, then I think we'll just take a vote on the entire award of bids. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Board members, I need a motion for the recognition of need for new policy EH data governance.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kyler. Dr. Locker.
Okay, board members, so a little bit later here in the meeting, we'll provide you with a draft policy for data governance, but we think it's important anytime we're bringing a new policy that we provide you some background and context for the need of that policy. In other words, why are we bringing that to you? So before we just plop it down. So, Mr. Bricka, if you wouldn't mind providing the board with some of that background and context for the need.
Sure. As Dr. Lockett said, there are two agenda items. There's a discussion item that does sort of lay out the background. I think there's some documentation with that. I think the recognition of need is tied to your board policy on policy development, BGA. So your policy says that as you institute a new policy, your first action is to recognize the need. So the agenda cover sheet kind of lays out, I guess, a couple of key points that have happened. One, we know that the state has passed a new law relative to student data governance. We know as we move forward in our dashboard development and the use of data through the strategic plan, we need to look at a comprehensive way that we view all of our data in the school system. And then we also had a compliance monitoring relative to graduation assessment data, and through that compliance monitoring process, one of the weaknesses identified is that we lacked policy related to specific data governance policy practices. So those three things kind of came together, and we said, all right, well, I think we do need to sit down and develop an actual policy and regulations regarding data governance. Dr. Locker did form a policy committee, a data policy committee charter in April. There were a number of us who worked through that. We looked at best practices provided by both the state and federal agencies. We looked at what some of the other counties in the system had done and some other states regarding data governance, and we use that information to pull together what you will see or have the ability to discuss later on. But as I said, your policy, sort of the first number one state is the board needs to recognize by majority of vote the need for policy, and then the superintendent can provide you with that. So this is sort of that part of the process.
Thank you, Mr. Bricka. And I do believe it's a need of the system, and as Greg said, we've already started some work to really examine what the state is saying, what some best practices are currently, and tonight, later, when he brings the policy for discussion, that's a draft policy, just like we would with anything else. We'll put it out there, get feedback. So it's informational this evening for the board and then ultimately for the community before it would become policy. Yeah.
Board members, questions? And I guess the reason this is the first time we're seeing something like this, because I don't think we've actually drafted many brand new policies. It's usually that we're bringing existing policies forth for revisions.
Correct, and what Mr. Bricka described is we actually do have, what's the number, the lettering again, Greg?
It is BGA, Policy and Policy Development.
Great. So
Okay.
in order to have a new policy, we have to have a discussion about
Recognition for the need
whether
for
we
the
need a
policy.
policy, right?
Right, okay.
So we're dotting those i's and crossing those t's.
And I would generally agree that it makes sense to have an overarching data governance policy and strategy. And I agree with the approach of, looking at best practices and building that in. Were there any negative findings? Because it was saying how the findings from the OCM was driving some of this. So were there negative findings that were driving this, or was it just that, well, it'd be better if you have an overarching policy?
The questionnaire that the Office of Compliance and Monitoring provided prior to the review asked for us to provide our policies relative to data governance. And granted, it was a very small review. It was looking at graduation data, at grade changes, at how we document whether students met graduation requirements. But it did expect in the broader the leadership component of the review, it did want us to provide those policies, and we didn't have them to provide.
Okay. And do we think that this will help us with consistency of reporting across the state? Like, I'm assuming other jurisdictions probably already have some of these sort of data governance policies. And I know that there have been issues in the past with how things are reported to the state in various jurisdictions. There's all kinds of inconsistencies.
And that actually is a part of what's driving this. That's what started driving the compliance reviews from MSDE. And I guess that's why they identified those key components in the review. The student data governance law will require each system and MSDE to develop best practices and models for student data governance. So I think from that end, it will become more uniform, and that the state will provide some guidance. I think we found maybe 4 or 5 state models of data governance policies that were out there, and they were generally larger counties, and that it's harder to sort of wrestle a larger county. And so they did have written policies, and we did look at those as we moved forward.
Okay. So, presumably, we can get into this when we get into the policy description, but I would imagine that we would maintain a lot of definitions of this is exactly what these metrics are, and this is how we're calculating them, and so that it can remove some of those inconsistencies that we've been seeing.
That's what we hope to provide you in the discussion component.
Great. All right. Board members, any other questions? No? Okay, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7E. Board members, I need a motion for the approval of the reappointment of ethics panel members.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Dorsey, second by Ms. Battaglia. Dr. Lockard.
Okay, Mr. O'Neill is going to just provide a quick overview.
Thank you. We have 2 members of our board, of your board's ethics panel, whose terms inadvertently lapsed. They've been serving because no successor has been appointed, but this action would put us back in alignment with your policy in terms of the membership composition and staggered terms of the members of your ethics panel. Ms. Lucido reached out to the 2 people. These are incumbent members, so you would be reappointing both of them, and they're willing to continue to serve. And I reached out to Ms. Smith, who's the chair of your ethics panel, and she's very excited to have them continue to serve. So this is just sort of housekeeping to get those terms back in shape.
Okay, so this is just approving the reappointment of these 2 members. Okay. We'll discuss the ethics policy later.
Separate, yeah.
Okay. Board members, any questions? No? All right, then I call for the vote. All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, board members, I need a motion for the approval of revisions to board policy BC ethics.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kyler. Dr. Lockard. Or back to Oni.
Great, thank you. So we're bringing for hopefully action just a couple of what we consider non-substantive changes to your ethics policy. It's an immense policy because it's based on the State Ethics Commission model policy for school systems. It's also been converted to the new template when it was adopted after the last major change at the General Assembly. It was on the prior template, so it may look different, but it's the same policy put on the new template. There's only 2 changes being recommended. I believe they're on pages 2 and 4, Brenda, of the policy. The first one gets at the composition and terms of the ethics panel members. A couple of winters ago, Superintendent Guthrie at the time brought you a similar appointment of panel members, which you just undertook a second ago, and realigned the staggering of the terms so that the terms were all staggered, and it aligned with the requirement for staggered terms in the policy. But what that action at that time didn't do was accurately reflect, based on the policy, which represented bodies that those panel members represent fell onto the staggered years. So we got the staggering right, but we kind of had the 3-2 backwards in terms of the panel members representing these 3 groups are appointed on the odd years, and the panel members representing these other 2 groups on the even years. This would just be to correct the reality of what you just appointed and what the prior board appointed in the past, and align the policy language to that staggering of terms based on the panel members' representative groups. So that would be one change, and again, we consider that non-substantive because it's actually just aligning the policy then with the reality. The second change, I think, is on page 4, Brenda, and this has to do with a recommendation actually from the Office of Legislative Audit, and I can at least see it from here with the light. It's to change the date by which the ethics panel will review the financial disclosure forms required under the ethics policy. So superintendent sends them out to officials and board members and candidates. We all who are required by policy to do it have a date by which we have to return it, and then there's a requirement under the policy and the law that the ethics panel review those disclosure forms. The Office of Legislative Audits noted that there's not a comfortable time frame in the law, in our policy for that to reasonably happen, and recommended that we make a change to one of the dates so that it could happen. Your ethics policy is a bit unique among all of your other policies in that even though you approve it, you still have to have the State Ethics Commission also approve it. And we did reach out to their legal counsel, Jennifer Agar, and talked about these things with her, and she's not in place of the State Ethics Commission, but she does give them legal advice, and she said she believed that these would be considered non-substantive changes that the Ethics Commission would pass relatively quickly and easily, but it still does have to leave here and go there, wait till it can be scheduled for them to approve it, and then come back for it to be official. And because these 2 changes are, in our view, non-substantive, and because that additional process has to happen, we decided to bring these not for discussion tonight, but for action. Now, if you're uncomfortable acting, you can take it as discussion, send it out for public comment, and bring it back later. There's no real harm other than we've already started the next fiscal year, so those processes would be underway, but they could be amended later as well.
Board members, do we have, before I would call for a vote, do we have consensus that these are non-substantive changes and we're okay with moving forward with taking the action tonight? Yeah? Okay, great. Okay. Just one quick question on the first item. So does that correct it for the foreseeable future, or are we going to have to change it again based on how we appoint new members?
This combined with what you just did, the action you just took, reappointed the 2 members, put those 2 things, the policy and your appointees, in concert, and then we should stay on schedule forever after that. Every February, Dr. Lockard should bring you reappointments.
Okay. Great. Dr. Dorsey.
I just had one question. In fact, I guess it's just on page 5, number 3. It looks like we've captured your new title in most places, and for number 3.
And not in 1?
Yeah, we need to have Chief Operating Officer there.
Okay, then we'll note that and make that change. Whenever we have any policy open that references titles, any policy at all, we do try to go ahead and make the changes that reflect the current organization. And we don't always point those out, but anytime you have a policy here, we try to catch those things as it goes. So good catch. Sorry I missed it, and we'll just automatically update that.
Right. Good catch, Dr. Dorsey.
Very good catch. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Kenny? I'm sorry, Mr. Kyler?
Yeah, not part of the policy, but the cover sheet. based on what we just said, that should be changed to, it's not for board discussion and it's not going to be any action next month. We're taking the action now.
Correct, if you're willing to do that.
Yeah.
And again, if you're not, it's okay. The world won't end.
I think-
It's up to you.
Yeah, I think we should, but I think we just need to change that.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Okay, so it sounds like we had a couple of very minor revisions that you're going to be making, but we would now call for the vote on the action of approving the policy as amended.
Correct.
All those in favor? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 7F. Board members, I need a motion for the approval of, 7G. I need a motion for the approval of the MABE Legal Services Association annual fee. Moved by Mr. Kyler, second by Ms. Battaglia. Dr. Lockard.
Okay, board members, I'm recommending the annual fee for the Maryland Association of Board of Education Legal Services Association, also known as LSA. It's a division of MABE that deals with school system policy, legal implications for school systems. Among other things, they provide professional development, school law resources, amicus briefs, and other related services. I know Mr. O'Mealy could give us more. Carroll County Public Schools has always been a member of LSA, and I recommend continuing our membership.
Board members, questions? I'd just like to say this is consistent with prior years, and they are actually looking to increase their level of services, so I think this makes sense. And Marcia and I, Ms. Herbert and I, we've attended some of the sessions that they provide, and they've been very informative, and I'm sure other members have as well, so I think this makes sense. Okay. Ms. Herbert.
I do try to attend as many dates that works for me, because they are very informative sessions, and they do nothing but enhance your learning, because there's a lot to learn in this position, and they are always there, and they questions that that come up, they are right spot on and give you great advice. So it's always a new adventure every time I go down there, but it's a good adventure. The driving stinks, but it is a great it's a great adventure. So they have, yeah, but yes. Well, it's a very worthwhile every time we go down.
Plus, I was just going to add, just the communication with other board members and the dialogue that we enter into a lot of times is just very enriching and rewarding. And, it's like with most professions and most jobs, we all face similar situations, so it's just interesting to sort of debrief and talk together and learn together.
Agreed. Excellent. Okay, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and moving on to item 7H. Board members, I need a motion for the approval of temporary construction easement for Elmer Wolf Elementary School.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kyler. Dr. Lockard.
Right, board members, this is a routine easement for construction purposes. The Carroll County Bureau of Resource Management is requesting a temporary construction easement to make improvements to the stormwater management structure located on Elmer Wolf Elementary School property. We expect the project to commence in late July and be completed before the start of the school year, so it should have little impact there, as well as little impact on the summer schedule. It has been, to note, it has been reviewed for legal sufficiency.
Excellent. Okay, board members, any questions? Commissioner Moore.
Sorry? Are there any credits associated with this? That was me or TMDL? Okay. I don't know. Okay. I can find out for you.
Yeah, that's
All right. Board members, any other questions? No? All right, then I call for the vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and that concludes the action items, and we'll move on to discussion. And the first up is the proposed policy data governance. Dr. Lockhart.
All right, so we'll bring Mr. Brickett back up to go over the proposed policy.
So I've provided you with background on it as we look at the initial section. I sort of covered that in very briefly as we talked about the policy as a whole. There are, as I said, a number of things coming together that would lead us to need a data governance policy. The only different take we looked at is that most of the requirement is related specifically to student data governance. You know, the state law, the finding in the audit or in the monitoring, those were related to the need to have a student data governance policy. As a school system, we realized that as we went through the strategic planning process, that there are a lot of data that we have that we need to maybe have a systematic look at how we address that data through the whole data life cycle, from the collection, from the storage, through the use, the access to the data, as well as the destruction on the end. And that, from what we've seen in the best practices documents, is really where we hit with the policy. If you were to look briefly at the policy, we did take the approach in recent policies that we've seen developed that a policy provides more general outline for your expectations to set your priorities. And you can see that through that we define the data governance. Believe it or not, it was very, very difficult to define what data are. Right? I mean, I think everybody conceptually can say, oh, what data are, but when you try to put down the words of what we're talking about, I found it really, really hard to draw that definition. But we do then also make a distinction between both the plan and the program. Right? The plan's going to be a written expectation, guide what we do relative to data, but the program involves the individuals and the people and the processes because this is going to be a lot of work for a lot of people to make sure that it's done accurately and appropriately. So again, you can see the policy. You know, the policy simply says that it is critical, that data are a critical resource, and that you support making sure that it is protected appropriately, and that we have a guidance to govern that. So that's fairly brief outline of the policy. The meat really comes in the regulations. And I don't know if you want to discuss generally the policy first, or you have questions about that, or if you wanted me to go through the regulations as well.
Board members, did we just want to open it up for questions on the policy piece of it? Or does it make sense to go straight into regulations? Because I think probably the more substantive information is in the regulations piece. Yeah, Mr. Brooker, you
Sure.
just want to move on to that? Okay.
Sure. Based on best practice, what the regulations set up is a three-tiered system for data governance. There is a data policy committee. The superintendent did set that charge, the data policy committee, and there were 7 of us. And they're outlined in the information I provided. The data policy committee is really the broad level of executive leadership that really has the role of ensuring that what we have in place meets the expectations of the various laws and regulations. Below that, then, there is a data governance committee. And the best practices really actually had an extra tier, and we thought that we can do it with those 2 committees. We can manage our process. When we looked at the data governance committee, we realized that we were really talking about the superintendent's executive leadership team. You know, that each program area, that the director or the officer was in charge of that data. So we set it up as a standing meeting item in the cabinet meetings, in the ELT meetings, and that each of those individuals then would be responsible for the data that fall under their respective programs and offices. Ultimately, the responsibility for implementing the data policies would fall to data stewards, and that's something that on the whole, and particularly in a formal matter, we don't have data stewards throughout our system. You know, we have people we assume, and we have people with job descriptions that talk about making sure that they are overseeing the use of the data, but we haven't really identified them as specifically as data stewards. As you mentioned, that there are a lot of definitions that would be involved in this, and I tried to pull out, there's quite a few definitions in the couple of pages of definitions in the regulation that talk about when we're talking about data collection, what do we mean? What do we mean by quality integrity? What are stewards? What are their jobs? If you think about a data governance program and you start to dig into it, there are so many, it ties to so many things we do in our system, right? A Public Information Act request is related to the disclosure of data, right? So who makes that call, whether it's appropriate data? We can disclose that data. Are there privacy concerns? Are there, all of the things that we've defined throughout the program really are the things that really need to be fleshed out in the plan at this point. So the regulations, as we get to the procedures, talk about that the data committees are responsible for developing a plan, developing and implementing a plan for the oversight of the data stewards, for making sure that the data throughout, we talk about the data life cycle, right, from when we first collect it to when we legally destroy it, all of the aspects in between, who can get it, who can see it, how's it protected. So the regulations really do enable and provide guidance to a significant amount of work that will need to occur over the next year as we develop that formal plan. We do have a lot of policies, and I did try to list them, that relate to, we have a record retention policy, right? We have a FERPA policy. We have a lot of policies, but this would be sort of the umbrella policy over which all of those would fall. So that's a very brief view of the regs.
And Mr. Burke, I know you did identify a bunch of policies in here that would directly tie to this. Are all of those policies still in fairly good shape, or would those all need to be revisited to see if we have?
I mean, actually, as you look through them, some of them we have or haven't reviewed maybe in 3 years or so, and there have been changes. So I think as we begin the process that they are going to need to be reviewed.
Okay. So we would just bring those forth in succession as we move forward?
Correct.
Yes. And Dr. Lockard, how often does your cabinet meet? So this would be a standing agenda item on your cabinet meetings?
Moving forward once a month.
Once a month?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And is there a particular owner of this in general? Because I know there's a committee, but a lot of things die in a committee, and you don't necessarily have a single person that you can hold accountable for the items.
So as one of the requests of the state superintendent, Dr. Lockard was asked to identify an individual who would act as a coordinator for the student component, a data governance coordinator, and he did ask me to do that. So from that sense, I kind of assumed the role as the data governance coordinator for this whole thing for right now. Okay. And you can see in the responsibilities in the regulation, it does define the data governance coordinator appointed by the superintendent as the person who's responsible for the overall program. That is the person who's responsible for setting the agenda items, for calling the policy committee when necessary, and for governing the work of the sort of disparate data stewards throughout the system.
Board members, additional questions? Mr. Kyler?
So the committee, then, you're in essence the chair of the committee, and you're the one that owns this, and there's 6 others appointed by superintendent, correct?
Yeah, that's how we sort of kick this off, and that's what we're proposing to move forward with, yes.
So I guess the process that we would use at this point would be to put this out for public feedback? Okay. And you did make mention in the write-up that, we might, there might be some benefit to holding off on this if the state were to come forth with some additional best practices, but it didn't seem like that was terribly likely.
Correct. So in the background document I did provide, options for implementation, and just kind of having sat through implementation of policies recently, we know that there's always sort of a give and play in a policy development, right? Mr. O'Neill provided you with this huge ethic policy that had everything in it, and that was at the policy level. We don't do that. You certainly could choose to do that. But we could also hold off and wait for more state guidance. From serving on the state committee, and Mr. Davis serves as the head of the state CIO group as well. And as we've had the state meetings on student data governance, it doesn't seem that there's going to be a model policy like we've seen in some of the other areas. It seems that it will be more like best practices and recommending that best practices be used regarding data governance. So we're comfortable, at least at the policy level, of establishing a policy because it is so broad in its direction.
Okay. And the policy is, it's pretty straightforward. And again, really the kind of meat and bones for implementation is really within the regulations. So I would imagine that the regulations will evolve over time.
Yes.
And that's something that would be brought, I mean, we don't need to approve the regulations necessarily, but as a course of action, they're always brought forth to us as we're changing the regulations for informational purposes.
Yes.
Okay. Do you expect that that would come forth fairly regularly over the short term, or over the next year or so?
I think, in all honesty, I think the regulations they were the Data Policy Committee's best guess based on best practice of how we could function as a school system, and we think that our goal as a committee then and as the superintendent's cabinet is going to be to put together a draft plan. And you will be informed of the plan as information as we move forward. That would be my hope, is that the next thing you would see would be the first incarnation or draft of that plan.
Okay. And this is going to be fairly far-reaching. It's going to touch a lot of things in terms of the strategic plan and student privacy and okay. Great. Board members, any other comments or questions? No? Ms. Herbert.
I'm glad you put in what all the abbreviations meant, because there are a lot, and I'm like, my granddaughter spilled iced tea all over it, and I'm thinking, oh my lands, what's going on, as you can see, and then I was reading it, and when I saw those prerequisites, thank you for putting all that in there, because I know right up here, everyone would know what that all meant.
It's the old English teacher in me.
Thank you.
Old being the key.
I know, but I do appreciate it, because I don't think we all would have known those abbreviations.
The acronyms.
Yes, those little acronyms. Thank you.
Okay, so board members, we then have consensus to send this policy out for community feedback. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Burka. Okay, so that concludes our discussion items, and we'll move on to unfinished business, new business. Board members, we do have a couple of items that we need to discuss under this section. The first one that I'll bring up is, that we just had a very productive work session right before this board meeting concerning East Middle School options. And we did come to consensus in that meeting as we walked through all of the options, and by process of elimination, got very comfortable with a particular course of action. Do we think we need any more preamble than that, or should I just go straight to the motion?
Straight to
the motion. Okay. Then, based on the feedback and the discussions that we had at the work session, I move to amend the Educational Facilities Master Plan 2019 to 2028 to include a replacement middle school project for Westminster East Middle School.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Dorsey. Board members, do we have any additional comments or questions that we want to put forth before we vote on that item?
I know one community's going to be very happy.
Right.
Or a couple communities.
So, I mean, just a couple of very specifics is that this is, site yet to be determined. We have future work sessions to have additional discussions, but we did say that there will be a middle school replacement project. Okay. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that is very good news. We have a path forward, so very exciting.
Yes.
Okay, so that was the big one. We also, there was one thing that I wanted to mention. I had brought it up under the award of bids, and we were talking about the Smart Foods contract. I wanted to discuss with board members and see what your thoughts might be about talking about healthy choices offered to our students through school lunch and breakfast programs, because there's been so much research and so many things going on in the public eye right now, basically saying, so many issues related to childhood obesity and behavioral issues, and a lot of that can be very diet related. And when you go to some of our elementary schools and you look at the farms population and you look what they're choosing to eat for breakfasts, and it consists of all packaged goods and donuts and things like that. I would really like us to consider maybe having a broader discussion about healthy food choices. And this is no slight at all to Ms. Sarno. I mean, she has done an absolutely fabulous job in running food services. So this is not meant to be a slight at all to any of that, but just kind of talking about health conscious and helping our kids understand the importance of making healthy choices and providing some more of those healthier choices. And would there be any interest? Ms. Herbert?
Yes. That was funny we brought this up, because 2 months ago I did drop off a whole bag of healthy choice selections of food for vending machines that they could have. I don't know what happened to that. I'm sorry she left, but she could have probably filled me in on that. But it was a whole container of healthy food snacks for students and teachers alike.
Okay, great. Mr. Klingberg?
There we go. I would certainly say there's a lack of healthy food options in the cafeteria for sure, and there needs to be a normalization of it for students. A lot of them are so used to junk food and so used to other packaged goods that it becomes just regular for them to pick them up at the lunch line, where if the school were to provide a little bit more of that normalization, that might help them choose the healthier option.
Okay, great. Thank you for the student perspective. I appreciate that.
I think, could we possibly look at how other counties ranked? Like Howard County received an A+, so I mean, we could look in to see what they're doing that we're not, as far as, having that school food environment, better choices for them and better options, seeing what we can do. I think that's one couple steps that we can do, is see what the other ones are doing.
See what some other counties are doing.
Yeah, it was like Howard, Anne Arundel, even Baltimore City got a B+, which kind of seems surprising a little bit. But this was coming from MarylandMatters.org. It was a report card based on foods in the different counties. So I think it's something we can look into.
Okay. And there's a lot of research out there right now, and how dietary habits can have significant impact on academic outcomes. So I think it'd be very educational for us to take a look at some of those things with all the other issues that are facing our American youth today. Okay. So board members, do we have consensus that that's something that we'd want to take a look at in maybe a work session in the near future?
Yes, and again, we certainly would be including the food services department and supervisor.
Absolutely.
In that discussion.
Okay. Great. All right, thank you for that. I did want to, I'm sorry, we didn't actually do item 9A, which is the Community Advisory Council feedback. I think because it's in the summer and they're not actually meeting over the next 2 months, we probably don't, unless anybody had anything specific that they wanted to bring up under that item.
Just kind of like as I go to various activities, something I hear from parents sometimes is possibly having like a guest speaker. I think I even said this before, whether it be somebody from the health department to just bring up statistics that the members of CAT can take back to their schools. Because sometimes I think it's there is that stigma of, well, that's in one end of the county and not on another. So I think it'd be nice to kind of have something like that that the different parents can take back to their schools. So.
Okay. Would that be something that could be, you could work with Ms. Gaddis on an agenda item for the one of the very early meetings of the year?
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
I just had a couple of things I wanted to share real quick. There is a mental health first aid class at Carroll Community College that is free. Basically, it is making sure you take care of yourself. It is extremely important. It is a 2-day class for a couple hours, and they just kind of go over on how to maintain your mental health. There is auditions for a program called This Is My Brave. They did have auditions the other day, and the second one will be on the 16th, and that's at the Carroll Arts Center. This weekend is the Pride Festival in Westminster, so I do hope that some people can make it out. It's a great way to show just support for the community. And 4-H is the end of the month, so theme is Let the Good Times Grow. So make sure you go to the 4-H fair. It's July 26th through August 3rd, and it is very important to show, again, support for the kids that are in the 4-H and our FFA. They work really hard with all their projects, whether it be animal cakes, their artworks that they did do in our schools. So a lot of them are on display. And one last thing, just on a personal, kind of PSA, do your mammograms, do your self-checks. This is for men and women. It is really important, so pick a date every month, whether it be hey, just roll the calendar, the Board of Ed meetings, do self-checks, and just kind of use your birth date as the time to schedule your mammogram appointments. It's really important. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Pataglia. Commissioner Weaver, would you like to make a statement about the event that you were telling us about on July 23rd at Sandy Mount?
July 23rd, Sandy Mount Park. There's walk with the commissioner. Commissioner Weaver happens to be the one on that day. Invite all people to come out, a chance to discuss whatever's on your mind. I invited the board members to join me if they choose to. You might have to make a lap or two. But we'll be in the pavilion to start, and we'd like to invite people. I think the sheriff's going to be joining us, a few other people. So any question that comes up, I hope we can answer it for the citizens of the area. And you don't have to be from Finksburg to come. Anybody in the county is welcome to stop by at 7 o'clock at Sandy Mount Park.
Okay, great. And I would really, I'm going to try to be there, and we'd love to have that sort of one-on-one interaction with folks if you're interested in coming out. Board meetings like this, we can't really have an exchange, so it seems like it would be a very nice forum.
Totally informal. Bring the kids. They can play, and we'll have some other events.
So is that 7A or 7P? 7A or 7P?
7 p.m. 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Mr. Kyler?
And Commissioner Wance in 12 minutes is doing the same thing at Cape Horn Park.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to head over there, I don't know. He'll be there. Half hour, an hour. It's not a 10-minute thing. And Parks and Rec's also there.
Yeah,
right?
all the commissioners are trying to draw a little attention to our parks and everywhere we have around the county. So each one of us took one and doing an evening event to try to get people out and a chance just to talk with the community about whatever's on their mind. So
Excellent. Thank
hope
you.
to see you all there.
Ms. Herbert?
When we look out in the crowd, I see kids that I taught that are a lot older now. And then, believe it or not, we don't know who this man is up front in the black suit. People want to know who he is. That is the Naviance man. So anyway, people have already asked me who this man is in the black suit. So welcome, and if you see him in the hallways, or, you can put a face now to this person. So anyway, welcome.
And thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, and thank you.
Okay, board members, any other items? Mr. Kyler?
Yeah, and we approved the agenda, but the very bottom line, the date for the next meeting is incorrect. That should be corrected.
Yes, I was just about to read that, so, no, it's perfect. So with that being said, our next meeting is at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, August 14th, 2019. It's a board meeting with citizen participation in the boardroom here at 25 North Court Street, Westminster. We also have some work sessions that we're going to be looking to schedule in the very near future, so be on the lookout for those. And the last comment that I will make is that I will actually not be here for the August board meeting, so I will pass that responsibility for running that meeting over to Ms. Herbert, so I'm sorry.
Busy fun. She has to bring us back cannolis. I mean,
And
that's what
we
she's gonna have to
did
do.
record time tonight, an hour and 50 minutes for our board meeting, so we'll see if Ms. Herbert can beat it.
And August 14th is also the Mako conference, and I think all the commissioners are going to be there also.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, so we will not have an ex officio member present at that particular meeting. Okay. Okay. And board members, with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Battaglia, seconded by Dr.
I'll second it.
Dorsey.
Mhm.
Okay. All those, oh, and before we vote, we need to go back into closed. Just announcing that we're going back into closed after this. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, everyone.